They say fear is the oldest emotion known to mankind. It is the invisible chain that binds even the strongest of men. But in the rolling hills of what is now KwaZulu-Natal, there once lived a people who broke that chain. A people whose warriors charged in a battle with unshaken hearts and eyes that held no fear. They were the Zulu, and their courage was no accident. It was born from a secret that made the Zulu warriors fearless. Before the dawn of the great Zulu kingdom, the land was home to scattered Nguni clans, proud, independent, and often at war with one another. Their lives revolved around cattle, land, and honor. Yet among them, one man would rise to unite them under a single banner and reshape the very idea of warfare in Africa. His name was Shaka Zulu. Born in the late 18th century, Shaka's early life was marked by rejection and hardship. He was the illegitimate son of a Zulu chief and was cast out with his mother, Nandi. They lived as outcasts, mocked and mistreated by those around them. But in that hardship, something unbreakable was forged within him, a mind as sharp as the blade of a spear and a will that refused to bow. When Shaka returned years later, he was no longer the humiliated boy they once knew. He had become a warrior in the service of the Mthethwa, one of the powerful clans of the region. There, his brilliance in battle was noticed. And when the chance came, Shaka claimed leadership of the Zulu and began transforming a small tribe into one of the most formidable military powers the continent had ever seen. What made his warriors so fearless was not only their physical strength, but the belief system he built around them. Shaka understood that true power begins in the mind. He drilled his men to abandon the idea of individual survival and embrace the destiny of the nation. To fight for the Zulu kingdom was to fight for something far greater than oneself. Training was relentless. Young men were taken from their homes and molded into soldiers. They ran for miles barefoot through thorns and stones until their feet hardened like iron. They slept on the bare ground, ate simple meals, and learned to endure pain without a sound. Weakness was not tolerated. Every scar became a mark of honor, every bruise a lesson in endurance. Their weapons, too, were revolutionary. Before Shaka, African warfare relied heavily on throwing spears, a distant, cautious form of battle. But Shaka changed that. He introduced a new kind of spear, the Ikawa, short and heavy, designed for close combat. Its name came from the sound it made when pulled from a man's body, Ikawa. Shaka wanted his warriors to face their enemies up close, to look into their eyes as they fought. He believed that fear could only survive at a distance. Once you stood face to face with your enemy, fear died. The Zulu shield, or Isalangu, became their second skin. Made of cowhide, it was long enough to cover the body, but light enough to move with speed. Shaka trained his men to use it not just for defense, but as a weapon to hook, strike, and control the enemy's movements. He reimagined the art of war entirely, turning the battlefield into a deadly dance of precision and coordination. His army moved like a single living organism. The Impi formation, the famous bullhorn tactic, became the terror of the African plains. The center engaged the enemy, the flanks swept around to encircle them, and the reserves waited to strike when the moment was right. It was warfare executed with intelligence, discipline, and unity, and it crushed every tribe that stood against them. Yet beyond tactics and weapons, the real secret of the Zulus' fearlessness lay in their spiritual strength. Before every battle, they gathered around sacred fires. The Isangoma, the spiritual healer, would cast herbs into the flames, sending smoke into the night sky. Warriors would chant the names of their ancestors, calling upon the spirits of those who came before them. They believed their forefathers fought beside them, unseen but ever present. Death held no terror because it was not an end, it was a reunion. They smeared their bodies with ash and fat from the animals they had slain, believing it transferred the beast's strength into their own. They drank herbal mixtures to steady their minds and dull pain. And when the drums began to beat, their hearts beat with the same rhythm. One nation, one spirit, one destiny. The Zulu saw themselves as part of an unbroken chain that stretched from the living to the dead. They were not individuals fighting for survival. They were vessels of the ancestors' will. This belief gave them a courage that could not be shaken, even in the face of death. When the British arrived decades later, armed with rifles and cannons, they underestimated the power of this spirit. In 1879, at the Battle of Isenlwana, an army of Zulu warriors faced one of the most advanced military forces of the time. The British soldiers, dressed in red coats, marched confidently across the African plains, believing their firepower would easily crush the savages before them. But when the battle began, the British met something they could not understand. The Zulu came in silence, moving swiftly through the grass, their shields glinting in the sun. Then, with a roar that shook the earth, they charged. Spaters met bullets and bloed met dust. The Zulu fought with a ferocity that stunned their enemies. Even as their comrades fell, they pressed forward without hesitation, their eyes wide, their voices raised in the cry of a nation. Uzulu, Uzulu, 69250. When the smoke cleared, the British army had been annihilated. Over 1,000 soldiers lay dead. The Zulu had achieved one of the greatest victories ever won by an indigenous army over a European power. The world was forced to reckon with the courage of a people who refused to bow before guns and empire. But their victory came at a cost. The British would return stronger and more determined. Eventually, through superior weaponry and relentless campaigns, they would bring down the Zulu kingdom. Shaka himself would not live to see that day, betrayed and assassinated by his own brothers in 1828. Yet his legacy outlived him. Even today, the name Zulu commands respect. Their discipline, unity, and courage have become symbols of African strength and resilience. Historians still marvel at how a nation so young, armed with spears and shields, could challenge the world's greatest empires, and for a moment win. The secret that made the Zulu warriors fearless was not a potion or a ritual. It was something far deeper, the understanding that courage is not born from the absence of fear, but from a purpose greater than life itself. They believed that to die for the nation was to live forever in the spirit world. In their hearts, the Zulu carried an eternal truth, that fear dies the moment a man accepts his destiny. And in the echo of their war cries, across the hills and valleys of KwaZulu-Natal, that spirit still lingers, proud, unbroken, and eternal. Because courage, once born in the soul of a people, never truly dies. It becomes a legacy, whispered by the wind,